heavy rain and storms out there this evening. That pattern is going to continue, and we'll tell you more on how many more storms we can expect or when we can expect those storms for the rest of the week.
Plus, as we continue to talk about the devastating flooding happening across the United States this week, we bring you the Weather Extra on the science behind the culprit behind these events.
Live on your side. First Alert Weather Extra starts right now.
Well, right now on Weather Extra, more rumbles out there today, Lauren. Some big time lightning, too.
Yeah, you know, nothing unusual for summertime here in central Alabama, but it can certainly impact your evening plans. Yeah,
I've been keeping a watch on some of these storms around Calhoun County. Let's go right over to the radar here because a lot that we need to get into, tracking some strong storms, some intense lightning. Folks around Anniston, Blue Mountain, north to Weaver, seek shelter from that threat of lightning. White Plains over towards Highway 9, a lot of wet weather over towards Chocolaco, and that's all drifting to the north and east direction here. But notice the total lightning strikes there, showing over 180 strikes with this, so it is popping here in the Anniston area. Past couple of days, we've seen a lot of that wet weather into West Alabama, even starting out today, but we've had enough time to really heat up here, so these storms are popping. And Calhoun, or actually St. Clair counties, under a flood advisory, so Pell City back in towards Moody. We're concerned about the risk of some localized flooding. We've already had over 2 inches of rain in some areas here, so we really need to watch it. But you can tell that there is some movement to this. It's not just going to stay here all night. We will catch some breaks here coming up, but this is going to bring down those temperatures. In Birmingham, we are starting to see some improvements around the city in points north. Still need to watch it a little bit further south here. I've been noticing a couple of isolated pockets of rain trying to develop. Might get a lightning producer further south. You go down Highway 280, but here's a look at northern Shelby County. There's actually Greystone Elementary School right in that area, but some heavy rain towards Vandiver, Sterrett, lightning popping there over towards the Calcis community, and then you can see around Hamilton also seeing some scattered showers and storms. Tuscaloosa County, some pop-ups in areas to the north and west direction, but isolated right now across West Alabama. But when you look at the big picture, the wet weather is still fairly localized, and that's what we're going to be seeing here again for tomorrow. But the thing about tonight is the rain chances don't totally go away. So if you are heading out, you have some plans, just keep a watch on the radar and the weather app. A live look from Birmingham, we are seeing some improvements here. I know we have a show out at the Coca-Cola Amphitheater this evening, so folks heading out there, I know the gates were delayed, the start time there to head indoors or into the event venue, but you can see 8 to 9 o'clock. The chance for a few pop-ups are in the mix, but right now on radar, we're not seeing that storm activity in the immediate area. Now tonight I want to show you some of the model data. This is one thing I'm watching. You can see right in here the forecast radar data. We've seen several model runs picking up on maybe some leftover shower storm activity past midnight. So it's one of those summer nights where we might hear a rumble of thunder past midnight, just letting you know, and a late night storm can't totally be ruled out. So just giving you that first alert. It's not a heavy or widespread coverage through tomorrow morning, but the chance is still there. We just can't totally go 0% on those rain chances later tonight, even though things may seem like they might settle down. Just know that there could be an overnight storm. And looking ahead to tomorrow, we're also going to be seeing some development. I've got a map showing you where some of that could be a bit more concentrated later in the day. But one of the big topics we've been telling you right here, the Weather Extra, is flooding. We continue to bring the latest on the flooding happening around the country. Now New Mexico receiving the torrential rainfall on Tuesday, which brought historic flooding. This is some of that video and scenes from yesterday's event. The National Weather Service office in Albuquerque saying the the Ruidoso River there reaching a record-breaking crest of over 20 feet, several feet over the 15-foot major flood stage. Flash flooding occurred as monsoon rain fell across the burn scar areas from the South Fork and Salt fires. At least 65 water rescues were made yesterday. That was a big topic, Lauren. At one of the AMS conferences.
Yeah, and you know, a similar situation happening across Chicago. Last night, heavy rain causing flash flood alerts as cars were stranded and submerged on highways. Some of the heaviest rains falling across Humboldt and Garfield Park and some neighborhoods. So we can just kind of look at a loop here as we look ahead to where the worst of that flooding was. And it actually looks like here on First Alert AccuTrack over the past 24 hours, really showing that some of that worst flooding actually happened overnight around Chicago. So it's been really unfortunate that over this past week, a lot of these flooding events have been happening as nocturnal events, because we always say one of the worst things to happen if you are going to be going through some type of natural disaster is for it to be happening at night, because that can oftentimes catch you off guard, which is why we stress the importance of things like NOAA weather radios and of course your First Alert weather app set to receive notifications. But you can see just in the past 24 hours alone in the Chicago metro, almost 5 inches of rain has fallen, and the worst of the flooding happening west of I-90 and the I-290 corridor. Between 2 to 5 inches of rain fell within just 2 hours. As the rain continues across not only our area today, but other parts of the country, meteorologist Matt Daniel had the chance to speak with Dr. Marshall Shepard, a professor of geography and atmospheric sciences at the University of Georgia, as they discuss why these heavy rain events are occurring.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shepard, for joining me. One of the big questions we want to ask about is the flooding in Texas. What are some of the factors, in your opinion, that made this event so different? Because in the past, we've been hearing that this is a very flood-prone area.
Yeah, it is a flood-prone area. And in fact, there's a reason this region is called Flash Flood Alley. This is a region that gets plenty of Gulf moisture, but let's break down the meteorological factors with this particular event. You had the remnants of a tropical system. There was something that we call a mesoscale convective vortex, a little spinning feature in the atmosphere, and there were particularly high precipitable water values. This is what meteorologists use to look at the amount of available water vapor in a column if we condensed or precipitated it out. So when I see high precipitable water values, when I see a focusing mechanism, and there was also a negatively tilted trough in the atmosphere, an area of low pressure. So these were all factors that were worst case scenarios meteorologically for a big rain event.
And I've been hearing that it's a 1,000-year flood, or you've heard the term 100-year flood. Can you tell the people that are watching, what does that really mean?
One of the worst communication tools that we have in our arsenal is 100-year flood or 500-year flood, because it leaves people thinking this type of flood happens every 500 years or every 1,000 years. What it really means is really a probabilistic manner that it's the chance that you will see us. So let's take the 100-year flood. You've got a 1 in 100 chance. Think of the percentage, a very small percentage chance of that event happening in any year. But what we're seeing is that the 100-year flood is becoming pretty common. It's not really a measure of a rare event anymore. So some parts of this Texas flood were a 1 in 1,000 chance. But we're seeing these types of events happening with a bit more frequency over time. And that's because the atmosphere has more water vapor available to it, Matt.
Well, I mean, it's in the past 5 days, we've had the flooding in New Mexico. We were seeing flood events in Chicago. Here in the Birmingham area, we actually broke a daily record rainfall yesterday of 1.7 inches just from a pop-up thunderstorm alone. So I'm glad you just mentioned about the frequency. Is that becoming, like, how more frequent are we seeing these flood events?
Look, I'm a scientist at the University of Georgia, so I go by studies in the peer-reviewed literature, not what I see in the blogs and on Twitter and other social media. And what the scientific literature is clear about, it's unequivocal, is that we're seeing the heaviest rain events are raining with greater intensity. Let's take the Texas event. Some of the rain weights were 2 to 4 inches of rain falling in an hour, and for sustained periods of time. And so when you have a lot of rain falling over short periods of time, that's a recipe for flooding. And we're seeing that in rain events happening in Birmingham, here in Atlanta, whether it's a hurricane or an afternoon thunderstorm. It's raining with more intensity. And that's related to the fact that our warmer atmosphere has more water vapor holding capacity or availability for evaporation rates to increase. And so these storms are more juice. So yes, rain happens naturally. I want the listeners and viewers to understand that we know that, but it's not either or. They're happening naturally, and they're likely juiced a little bit because of physics. The warmer atmosphere has a greater water vapor capacity.
And, you know, going off what Dr. Marshall Shepard was just saying, you know, we kind of have to give the atmosphere credit to be able to produce natural disasters. Now, us here on Earth as humans, yes, you've probably heard of a term called cloud seeding, and we want to give you the weather lowdown and break down what exactly that means. I have to stress that event is on a much smaller scale than what Dr. Shepard was mentioning was the cause behind what we saw with the Texas flooding, which was a mesoscale convective vortex. When it comes to cloud seeding, this is something that humans can do to help to bring moisture to drier areas, drought-stricken areas. So what happens is you have a plane that flies into a cloud, and here's the thing, the cloud has to already exist. We're not just creating clouds out of thin air. What happens when you have cloud seeding is you're able to release things called something like silver iodide into the cloud, and when that happens, it can serve as condensation nuclei. That's a fancy word. What does it mean? Well, basically cloud droplets, ice crystals, in order to form, in order to move from water vapor to that liquid or solid state, it has to have something to condense on. And that's where condensation nuclei come in. That can be something like dust or different type of particles in the atmosphere. So silver iodide actually works for that. And this is what is used on a very small scale to help to bring moisture to those drought-stricken areas. Or sometimes it can bring snow to areas that need that snowpack that have been really dry. So when you have something like silver iodide, it really helps for those clouds, cloud droplets, ice crystals to congregate on that, and that can help the droplets to grow. In order for rain to even fall out of a cloud, it has to be heavy enough for it to fall. It's all due to gravity, right? So when you have these droplets, when you have those condensation nuclei via silver iodide being released into a cloud, it allows the little droplets to kind of bump into each other. And as they bump into each other, they can get bigger and bigger, and eventually they can fall to the ground. This is something that has been happening to the 1940s. Often private companies will do this, as I mentioned, to help bring moisture to areas that need it, but it's on such a small scale, it cannot have an effect like it did the other day in Texas. Well, coming up on First Alert Weather Extra after the break, we'll have in 30 seconds an update on those storms moving through central Alabama.
All right, time to check in where we have some of that heavy rain falling here. The Weather Extra over Vincent getting some lightning at the moment. 81 lightning strikes with all these storms out there. That count has backed off with these storms back towards Pell City and east to Alabama. However, it still need to be indoors. We've got lightning, but this is all drifting. Let me go ahead and just put this in motion. I want to take this. This is a 1 hour. Well, let's make it a 30-minute lapse here, and you can just see how this is drifting as we put this in motion, more of a east to southeast direction. So if you're around Alpine Bay, Coosa Pines, Harpersville, you need to be indoors because of that threat of lightning. This is all building away from Birmingham, as you can tell. As we go into East Alabama, a lot of rain. Anniston area back in towards Weaver. One of our weather watchers there, Nathan Harper over in White Plains, was reporting got some heavy rain falling in that area now. You see over in the Cleburne County as well, places like Heflin North, a lot of folks there watching us. You can also see quite a bit of lightning there. Actually, that total lightning count jumped up. You can see over 150. So still some intense storms. Piedmont over towards Jacksonville, all those locations there. Stay weather alert. As we back the view out, you can see Clanton where we had some storms there. Looks like those cells because they didn't really make, well, they moved across the interstate and didn't last long, started falling apart. Looks like a little pop-up south of McCalla, right around the Helena area, and then over into North Tuscaloosa County tracking an isolated storm. And there's a chance tonight a lot of what you see here is going to settle down, but we still might have a rogue storm or two still on the radar even past midnight. So those rain chances stick around through the overnight and also through the rest of the week. And we'll time all that out for you coming up. And check this out. I was able to step outside today. I walked in. I said, you know what? It is so hot out here. I just wanted to check the road temperatures, and it was a sizzling 134 degrees, Lauren, here on Red Mountain. But just a friendly reminder that if you're heading outdoors on these hot days, maybe you probably don't want to be barefoot heading out to the mailbox, and certainly think about our furry friends and hot paw safety this time of the year. But hey, that was fairly accurate. Our road temperature data, it was a good test with our road temperature forecast data. It was right on the mark.
Yeah, hey, I'm impressed to see all systems go. And also
Right.
need to know where you got those sunglasses, Wes. Those were pretty
Hey, there you go. Hey, I keep those on standby. over
You
here.
know, they're a good pair to have. Well, you may want to keep them on standby as we get into the weekend when we do have a better chance for some more sunshine, less hit or miss storms around. But we did want to give you an update on the tropics. It is hurricane season after all. Of course, it's been fairly quiet except for Chantal that we saw this past weekend here in the Atlantic up in the Carolinas. But we actually have an update for you. Colorado State University, who always releases a seasonal outlook for hurricane season, just came with an update today. So back in June, when technically back in May, but this was their June outlook, they generally said, okay, this hurricane season looks like it's going to be an above average season. On average, you get 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. And this is what they called for in June. 17 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. So look what has changed since then. They've actually dropped their numbers down a little bit for that July outlook. And one reason that they have gone down in their numbers a bit is this is good news for us. There has been some slightly cooler water out in the Atlantic, but also in the Caribbean, there has been a more hostile wind environment. And when you have hostile winds, that really does not support the formation of tropical cyclones. And another thing we want to watch down the road is the La Nina forecast. You know, we can oscillate between La Nina, neutral conditions, and El Nino conditions. And it does look like even though we have been in a La Nina, as we look at August, September, and October, we may eventually be headed towards more neutral conditions. And sometimes when that happens, the activity just wouldn't be quite as impressive as it would be otherwise. But it's certainly something we're going to be keeping a close eye on here on Weather Extra. But still ahead, we break down rain chances as we head into the latter half of the work week. And the weather team hits the road as we take a visit across central Alabama. We'll be right back.
Okay, how much is long weather? Well, we had some storms earlier from some of these camera views, and you can see a break in the wet weather and down to 76 degrees. A live look from Nectar there. First Alert Sky Vision from the Tuscaloosa Mercedes-Benz Amphitheater looking to the south. You can see a little storm trying to bubble up south of town. There's still going to be a risk for some isolated development for us here in West Alabama, and some rain in Calhoun County. A storm raining itself out there over the county, cooling those temperatures off. You can see we're tracking that heavy rain, and a flood advisory has popped up from Anniston to Jacksonville. Over 2 inches of rain in some areas, and we could see some flash flooding, so we need to stay alert there. Most of the heavy rain and really intense lightning starting to shift more into Cleburne County, some of the more aggressive lightning, and then south of Pell City, these storms flaring up. So we're seeing some locations in here finally getting a little bit of rainfall over into East Alabama, but leads back in towards Pell City. Looks like this rain over the next 60 minutes, we should start to see this starting to break up a bit, and a break in the action this evening. Now, Tuscaloosa North, scattered storms. Model data still telling us that even though the rain might sort of thin out this evening, we still could see some development. Notice late tonight, we'll bring in some of that forecast data past 10 o'clock. And notice right in here, forecast radar says, well, maybe not completely dry for the overnight. So just don't be alarmed if you wake up to a rumble of thunder overnight. The risk for severe weather overnight's low, but there might be a heavy downpour or passing storm overnight. Tomorrow, rain chances ramp up after 10 o'clock and into the afternoon. And because we started out today, as we mentioned yesterday, likely we saw those scattered storms west of Alabama. And at the moment, we're seeing some rain across East Alabama. So with more rain in these regions today, there's a chance tomorrow we might see some more development in areas to the south. So I kind of painted on here at least the greatest concentration, especially for areas to the south. Not to say even north that we still could have a lightning threat or storm in the afternoon, but pay attention to that weather app for more scattered storms through the end of the week. Friday, this weekend, not a major change. Again, the rain popping up midday, and it's still very humid. That really does not change. So every degree we warm up there, 91 to 93, it's certainly going to feel much hotter. Lauren? Hey, before we head over, Lauren, meteorologist Megan Thomas visiting Columbiana this morning for their Cops and Cookies event. They talked about the seasons and how to stay safe in the event of a tornado. She also read both of her children's books, which of course we'll be talking a lot more about how you can have the First Alert Weather Team visit your class as, well, I don't want to say school's about to start. We still have some summer, right?
We do indeed. And we're certainly seeing it beyond the 7-day as we look 6 to 10 days from now above average temperatures in the forecast. So it looks like as we get into next week, we could be seeing the potential for more heat. And shocker, also looks like we could be seeing that better chance for heat activated storms, that potential for some scattered storms in the forecast. But of course, this time of the year, we always want to watch for the tropics too. As we look 6 to 10 days from now, really beyond the 7-day, you'll notice that it looks like on Thursday, this is July 17th, so this is looking at next Thursday. What I want you to pay attention to is the Gulf. Notice how it looks like there's going to be this Gulf moisture that's going to be moving in. Now, does that mean it's a tropical system? Not necessarily, but this is something we're going to be watching late next week into the following weekend, which is July 19th through 20th. So we've been seeing models hinting that there could be some Gulf moisture. Whether that organizes into something, not a guarantee, just giving you the first alert that we're going to be watching the Gulf here beyond the 7-day. We'll be right back with a final check on your forecast after the break.
All right, Lauren, a lot of rain on radar. One of these areas we're watching around Anniston, there is a flood advisory now. A lot of rain falling around Jacksonville, so stay weather alert.
Yeah, and make sure you stay dry. We'll have updates tonight on First at 9.